welcome to Tiny Voice Book Salon, and really excited that you are here. And this month we are discussing the environment, and I am joined by some fabulous authors and educators. Remember to join us via the comments chat. If you're there at the moment, say that you're there so we know you're there, and just comment, ask questions, join us as much as you can throughout this time. So I'm going to introduce our fabulous authors. First of all, we've got Hannah Gold, and we've also got Vashti Hardy. So welcome, ladies. And we've now got our educators, Rich Simpson, who has promised not to spend half an hour doing books, and Hydeh. There we go. I know you didn't, but I thought if I put it in there, you might not do it. Okay. So, how are you all today?
We are good. Thank
you. Fabulous, thank you.
So while I go over to Twitter and tell everyone that we are live here, would you introduce yourselves? So I'm going to start with Hannah. Off you go.
Oh, well, it's such a joy to be here because this is my first one as a guest. So thank you so much for having me. So my name's Hannah Gold. I won't be long, but this is I am the author of this beautiful book called The Last Bear, which came out in February this year, published by HarperCollins and illustrated very beautifully by Levi Pinfold. So that's me. This is my debut book as well.
Hey. And Vashti.
Just unmuted myself before I forget. So I'm Vashti. I've been here a couple of times before. Thankfully, you keep having me back, so that's nice. And so I'm the author of Brightstorm and Harley Hitch recently, The Griffin Gate, Wild Spark, and my Eco Fable book, which will be out July the 1st. Crowfall. Sorry, my ring light is getting in the light there, but that's kind of my little eco treasure. That's been a story of my heart for quite a while, but I didn't find the right way to tell it until now. So I'm quite excited about that.
I love that. I really do. And Hydeh, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Hydeh. This is my second time back, so obviously the first time went quite well. I am a Year 5 teacher in Birmingham. I teach at St Matthew's School, and I'm an ELE, and I'm also geography lead, so this theme sits really at the core of everything that I love.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself as well, seeing as I've told all of you. Now, you need very little introduction, Richard Simpson, but in case people don't know who you are you?
I am Rich Simpson. Rich Read a Lot on Twitter, although I might change that to Rich Talk a Lot, given the abuse I've just had about keeping to time and talking for too long. So watch out for a Twitter handle change. And I'm here to talk about books, surprise, surprise. And I've got a bundle of exciting recommendations, all to do on the environment.
Fantastic. Now, I know that many of you have got books alongside of you that you are also going to be recommending. But I want to start, Rich, with you. You wanted us to discuss the environment. Why?
I think because I do a topic or a theme. I'm not sure. We're going to have that discussion, aren't we? I do a book called, we read a book called The Explorer in Year 6, and we build a whole sort of topic and theme around it. And I try to link lots of other subjects into some of the themes that come up out of that book. And one of the themes is looking at the Amazon when we're reading that book, deforestation. We look at the plight of the animals, so orangutans in particular is one of the animals we look at, and we look at commercialization and all those sorts of linked ideas. And so I think the environment is something that appears a lot on the news and that children hear an awful lot about, but it doesn't seem to have appeared in lots of books unless teachers explicitly bring it up as an idea. It's never really the central theme of a lot of books. It's sort of something you can shoot off to or bring in. So I think it's really important. And there seem to be a few more books coming out now where actually the environmental theme is the central part of the book rather than just something that you can link to off the side of it. So I wanted to talk about that, and the fact that there are a few books that have come out very recently. I'm trying to think of any decent ones. No, I
You
can't
are
think of any.
me.
Trying to think of books come out recently with that theme that are absolutely brilliant, and I want to promote and talk about some of those as well. So I have got a big stack of books to talk about a little bit later. I've got one too. We've all got one.
Mine's in school. Sorry. So sorry, I wasn't sure if I was muted or not. I want to talk then about theme or genre. So what people don't know if you're watching is that we've just had quite a long discussion about theme or genre. And we were unpicking, well, what's the difference? And Vashti came forward willingly to describe the difference between theme and genre. Didn't you, Vashti? You jumped.
Jumped at the chance.
You did. You went, yes, let me talk about it.
Do you know what? I keep thinking of, in Doctor Who, sorry, often a slight tangent, but when Doctor Who says time is like that wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff. That's like theme and genre, that wibbly wobbly genre theme stuff. Well, theme, to me, the theme of a story is what lies at the heart, what's driving you to tell that story. So it's usually something in the human condition, I would say, something that's eternal through time that we grapple with as humans. That's usually what lies at the theme. And genre is the category that something fits into. So fantasy or picture books or books with facts. So there is obviously going to be a crossover between theme and genre with climate fiction, I would say, because when you're thinking about climate, it's very much about the human's relationship with climate. So because that it is something that humans are grappling with, our relationship with the environment and with our planet and with the creatures we share it with, which is and because obviously it's something that's very pressing now and urgent in our world and what we're dealing with, I think it is kind of escalating into genre status, perhaps. Stick my neck out there and say I think it is. Does that help? Does that explain a little bit?
It does. Hannah, what are your thoughts?
I think you're right, Vashti, because I was telling you before this started that when you kind of get a publisher, you have to go on submission. There's that kind of process where your agent submits your book. And even though my book has a really strong environmental theme, when we subbed it to the publishers, we didn't actually lead on the environmental theme. And I was like, oh, that's unusual. And my agent, that's because it's not really that much of a genre. And then we even talked about the fact that there was this kind of new sort of vanguard of children's books coming into the market, which was sort of almost more leading the way. And I know Vashti's going to talk about books which have been around a while, but it really does feel like I think we are moving into it's becoming a genre. I did a blog for Waterstones and they talked about climate fiction and wanted me to recommend 5 climate fiction books for children. And if you look at the current Waterstones book of the month, which I think obviously Rich is going to mention, Hark Lights, if he can find his copy, that's I would call that I think the tagline on that is, you're never too small to make a difference. I might be wrong on that one, but so it's becoming, I think it's moving from the world of theme into its own genre. And I think you'll start to see more and more in bookshops, probably booksellers grouping these children's books together in a category. I think that is, I'm putting my neck out, I think that is what we're going to be seeing very much more over the next year or so.
Hydeh, as an educator, what are your thoughts on theme and genre?
So I suppose with theme, we try and really link into what Vashti said. Why are you writing? What is your purpose for writing? Do you want to think about your reader and their friendships? Do you want to think about reader and grief? So I suppose when we're talking to children, it's about why are you writing? What are we reading? What are the key things that keep cropping up? And the things I'm going to have to provide you with a bit more knowledge on. because they probably might not identify things like grief or friendship unless you pull it out for them. So I think modeling that when you're reading, and especially when you're writing, is really key in terms of themes.
Completely agree. What about you, Rich? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I can't really add more to it. It is about finding those themes and not losing track and getting dragged off in those offshoots, and concentrating on what you want that message to be that the children take from the book. There'll always be other directions you can go in, what there, and sort of subsidiary stories and subline and subplots and things like that. But it's making sure that the message that you want the children to get from the book is the right one, and the one that you intend as well. So, you know, all the environment stuff, it needs to be a great story to start with, I think, to hook them in, but then you need to pick out those key messages and make sure that that's what they take away from it.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Does that make
agree more.
sense?
It does.
Wow.
If you're, oh yeah, well done. If you're watching and you want to comment, please let us know how you would, you know, explain theme and genre, and whether you think environment sits within a theme or within a genre. Now, another question that I've got is the environment, is it a new theme? Is it something that we are looking at more recently? And I know, Vashti, you say that actually it's been around a while.
I think if you sort of dig deep, you'll probably find it as you know, something that we've been grappling with for for a while. Got my water. So one of the books that I've spoken about before, Rebecca's World by Terry Nation. Sorry. Oh, trust me to lose my voice. Should we go to someone else? I'll have a drink and come back.
Yes. Okay, Hannah, I'm going to you.
I was just thinking while Vashti recovers, and I had this once in a meeting with my publisher, my first meeting. I was literally spluttering, I was going red, I was like so embarrassed and everything. I was thinking Michael Morpurgo, actually, because for years he's been really talking. He is my hero and the person I want to be when I grow up. But for years he's been really focusing on the relationship between children and nature. He runs the farm as well, where he brings children to the farm. And I'm trying to think of the book with the elephant, the tsunami book. Is it Escaping Freedom or Running or something? It's set on the Boxing Day tsunami, about a boy who escapes on an elephant, and then it talks about deforestation as well. So he's someone that's been around a long time, and obviously he covers lots more themes. So that has been there, but I think going back to the topic of theme versus genre, we're moving it from it being like a sub story, like Rich is kind of saying, one of the themes that we can pull out into more the center stage story. So I think it's almost like if you've got like a lane of traffic, it's coming from the outside and it's going into the center lane now. So hopefully Vashti's recovered her voice now.
I have, sorry, honestly, what am I like? Causing trouble. So Rebecca's World, Terry Nation, which was the book that really turned me on to reading when I was at primary school, when I was about 7 years old. And Rebecca, this girl, gets magically transported through a telescope to another planet, which is an amazing thing in itself. But she gets this planet and there is one tree left on this planet because this horrible man, Mr. Glister, has chopped them all down to fire big furnaces to build a big glass city. And there are ghosts on this planet, and the only way you can kill them is with wood. And he makes these shelters, and then people have to pay to get in these shelters to keep safe. So, you know, there's really big themes for a book for a 7-year-old going in there. And Rebecca goes on a mission to find this last tree and to do something about it and to bring the trees back to this world. So obviously huge environmental themes going on there, all under the umbrella of a wonderful adventure and fantasy story. But, you know, certainly I got that when I was younger, the importance of what was really going on in that story and how it related to our world as well, which I think fantasy is quite an interesting genre for that, because when something's, you know, in a different context, often it's an excellent lens for us to analyze our own planet. It can make things clearer sometimes.
Absolutely. What about you, Hydeh? Do you recall environmental texts and books when you were younger?
No, I don't actually, and I think that's I know awful, but I don't actually, and I think that's why I have this affinity now. I really love reading books about winter and the Arctic, and my children will say, "Miss, another book." So The Way Past Winter, we started in autumn. Sky Song. I just love books about the Arctic. The Last Bear, I'm reluctant to take it into school because I know the children are just going to steal it from me. But they can have it. Honestly, I think that's why I'm so I love reading now about the environment and that feeling with that connection with nature, because I didn't really read that when I was a child. So and hopefully I'm getting across that love with my children. About how it's so important to connect with nature. And we were reading Where the World Turns Wild by Nicola Penfold, and that's like, Vashti, what you were just saying about this fantasy world. It links really well with what's happening in the world at the moment with coronavirus. But I was loving it, and it's because I'm starting to get really interested in that kind of genre or theme at the moment.
Yeah. And it's funny, actually, I'm just recalling many years ago, I did, when I was teaching year 1, I did the beautiful picture book, Rainbow Bear. I don't know if any of you have come across it. Oh, it's just lovely. It's about this polar bear that didn't want to be white. He just didn't want to be white. And so he wanted to be a rainbow bear. And actually, the messages contained within that were so powerful about the environment. But back then, I didn't focus on those environmental messages. And I think my shift as an educator now is that's what I would focus on. But I didn't necessarily, I focused an awful lot on the emotions of the bear, but I think that environmental link I missed. What are your thoughts, Rich?
I've just been thinking that as everybody's been talking, actually, that from what I can remember at school, I don't remember the themes being talked about, like the environment or other things in the book. It was about the story.
Yes.
And it was all about the story rather than the extra bits and pieces, or the links, or the deeper meaning that you could get from things. And I think that possibly is a bit of a shift now, that we're more aware of the importance of the message as well as the story as an exciting sort of vehicle or carrier for the messages within it.
So, Hannah, coming to you, do you think the way that the environment is portrayed now in books is different from the way it was portrayed in books like the one that Vashti talked about, which was actually quite a dark dystopian sort of way?
Yeah, and I think going back to what we're saying as well, it's about any book is not just about, oh, here's preaching a message about the environment. I think at the heart of any book is about this love of nature, and I think that's what any book about the environment starts off at. That's the foundation. Here's a love of nature, so we can foster that cultivation and that belief in the child and the love of nature as well. But yes, again, a few years ago, many of the books, MG, but particularly young adult, teenage books, were very much dystopian. And so we're set in worlds, almost like a bit, Where the World Turns Wild by Nicholas Skinner is an example, actually, where, we've already gone past the point of no return. And so you've got this brother and a sister who are sort of seeking salvation and hope in the wild. And that was very similar to many of these books. So I think what perhaps we are seeing a shift more into now is an awareness of the message that such a book is giving out. I'm not looking at Where the World Turns Wild, because I love that book, but dystopian books in general, which are kind of saying, hey, it's too late, what can we do about it? And we're moving into well, it's not too late, and we've got to be responsible as authors, as teachers, as the message that we're giving out to children. It's a fearful environment, so how can we make it less fearful?
So I'm not actually directing this question to anyone, it's first to unmute. Why has that shift occurred?
I think there's a wider, it's not just the environment that's gone down that sort of dystopian future of unknown and slightly chaos. I think that there's lots and lots of dystopian based novels out and coming out more, because I'm not sure. I think they were starting to come out before the pandemic, actually. But I'm thinking of things like Polly Ho Yen, who wrote the Boy in the Tower, and there's that sort of dystopian future where a plant invades and demolishes the city on the left, and she's just written her first book for adults that's set in a very dystopian future where they put limits on the number of children that people can have. There's all sorts of sort of books coming out now about concerns about the future and where we're going as a society and as a world, and it's the environment is a massive concern, isn't it, with everything that's going wrong. The pandemic will now be something else to throw into the mix, that, you know, what's coming next. And I think there's that concern about the future being brought home to people, and starting to appear more in books as that message.
And what Hannah's saying about the message of hope is that, you know, why do you think that is?
I was just going to mention that I think that's to do with how the smallest of acts, we're realising now, especially over the last year and a half, the smallest of acts make the biggest of differences within our society. And I think that taking action, that we don't have to, I think because the environment and climate can seem so insurmountable, like there's nothing, what can I possibly do about the diminishing species? But it's actually those little actions will have an impact if we all make small changes. So I think that's maybe to do with the broader society as well.
Yeah, I really agree. I think like the amazing thing about the children's book genre and why it's the best the best area on any bookshelf is because it shows, you know, you've got child protagonists, child main characters leading the charge, you know, showing children that, you know, you can make a difference and you can be that person and your voice is worth listening to. You know, often, you know, especially in the past, it was that view that, you know, children should be seen, not heard, many years ago, and that, you know, adults look down with authority. But now it's very much you've got you know, brilliant people in the real world, children that are leading the charge, and so having children's books like The Last Bear with April, who's such an amazing, passionate, brilliant young lady, really making a difference in the way that she can, and that's, you know, I found it inspiring. So, you know, and I would have loved that sort of a book as a child. I think if I'd have read that as a child, I probably would have been signing up for the next expedition somewhere to go and save something.
I think that's what I'd love to do as well. It's like it's to foster, like, you know, who are these children going to grow up to be, where the planet is going to be in trouble? Can we grow up? Can we inspire children to be the next marine biologists or conservationists, and for them to just kind of, or even if that's not as a career choice, just to make more ecological, greener choices. But I definitely think the message of hope and inspiration is so needed, especially after the last year and all the anxiety and the fear and that contraction that we felt as a world. We need to put, you know, children's books that you're saying, Vashti, are just so amazing. There's seeds of hope, like dandelion heads in this world, and, you know, each book can kind of just go on to inspire so many other children in a way that is so difficult to do just via other means, I think.
Yeah. After we have heard from Rich Simpson, yes, Rich, I'm about to give you 5 minutes of recommendation time. Hannah and Vashti, I want to come to you and ask you how you would like us to use your books in the classroom. So, Rich, I am turning us off and I'm putting you on, and you have 5 minutes, at which point, Rich, I may well kick you off if you haven't been quiet. So, over to you, Rich.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, following on from that point about one person making a big difference and knowing that you can do it, one of the books I'm going to recommend tonight is this one, which is, see the cover now, The Boy Who Grew a Forest. And this is the true story of a young man called Jadav Payeng, who decided that the deforestation that was happening in his part of the world, in Brahmaputra, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, the Brahmaputra River region of India, and where his home was becoming more and more flooded. The deforestation was happening. So he decided to start planting trees. And when he saw the positive effect that was having, he planted more trees and more trees and more trees. And he's ended up years later carrying that legacy on and building or planting a 1,300 acre forest, which has regenerated the entire region. And it's a beautiful picture book. So it's suitable for younger readers. It's got lovely illustrations the whole way through, talking about what he did and how he tended to the plants each day, and ended up building it back into this wonderful wilderness where the wild animals start coming back into as well. So a real message about the difference one person can make. And a lovely quote at the end, only by growing plants the earth will survive. So a really important message in there as well. So that is The Boy Who Grew a Forest by Sophia Gauls, illustrated by Kayla Harron. That's just a lovely true life story as well. So nice to investigate that in real life. Next book is My Name is River by Emma Ray. And this is about a young boy called Dylan. And I'm laughing already because he's a naughty boy. He doesn't like what's happening at his farm in Wales. The farm's going to be taken over by a big multinational company. And he doesn't want that to happen. There's themes of family and history and things like that. It's set in Wales. It's lovely, beautiful setting. And I'm laughing at the comments here because people are telling me to slow down a little bit. But if I slow down, I won't fit them all in. So what Dylan decides to do is do something about it. So he tells his mum he's going on the geography field trip, and he tells his teacher on the geography field trip that he's staying at home, and he goes to the Amazon to find this multinational company and do something about it. And when he gets there, he discovers the deforestation and what's happening there. He gets involved with a street child from Brazil called Lucia, who's like this really brilliant female lead character who's like a gang master for one of the child gangs. And she's really cheeky and really sassy. It just made me smile. It's a great story, great characters. And a really nice book, and nice. I link it into the Amazon and some work that I do around deforestation, so it sort of fits in around that as well. So that's a great book too. Going to go for a non-fiction book next, and this is one I've had in my classroom for years. It's a picture book, non-fiction book. It's The Earth and the Air, 366 Days. It's from Thames and Hudson, and it's just pictures, one picture for each day of the year. And it's got these absolutely incredible photographs of the Earth taken from above, different places. And I like putting under the visualizer and showing these amazing places around the world. And then on the facing page, you've got a little map and it tells you exactly what you're looking at. So that last picture there with those amazing green ripples is a rice field in Asia. And there's just beautiful pictures, beautiful images. And the children love exploring it and then finding out more about those actual places in real life. And there's lots of places you can link into your actual geography. So there's craters and volcanoes and all sorts of amazing pictures to use in geography and real life rather than a fiction story. So real life amazing places as well. Oh, what am I going to go for next? Let's go for another amazing book that came out recently called Last. And this one is about endangered species. And this is about the story of a white rhino. And it's based on the true story of Sudan, who's the last male white rhino. It's by Nicola Davies. And it's just beautiful. The pictures are absolutely incredible and just a really powerful message. So you can see that it starts off with the words, I am the last, and that close up on a very, very sad looking rhino. The more you look at this book, the more you notice there's lots going on in the background. There's a little girl who appears the whole way through the story wearing that green spotty scarf, and she carries on through the story following this rhino where he gets returned to the wild, and it links into real life conservation efforts to repopulate the population of white rhinos and what we can do about it. And if you look in the last picture, the girl involved with the conservation here is now a bit older, but there's still a green spotty scarf there as well. So it's following this one person who wants to make a difference, again, following that theme. A lovely book. And no writing in this one. It's a wordless picture book. And this one's called Hike by Pete Oswald. And it's the story of a boy and his dad. And there's no words in it. And it's maybe a bit of a push to put it towards an environment book. But what I really like about this is the man and his son live in the city, And it starts off showing them in the city, you see it in the background, but they go off on a trip together. And it's just about this man and his son and their journey into the wild, into a forest. The pictures are absolutely beautiful. And again, lots to discover and lots to look at in there. And I really like the idea that they love going into nature. And I love the idea that it's the relationship with the father and his son is a key part of the book, but also the relationship that the father and his son have with nature, that's their place to go to spend some time together and to enjoy it together as well. So just a really lovely, nice picture book with lots of exciting places that you can write the narrative to go alongside. There's lots of ideas for how to use it as well, and spot the animals that are included in the book. This book, again, I'm including it because of the descriptions it has of another part of the world. So it's set in Asia, in Papua New Guinea. It's inspired by the author's childhood. It's called The Shark Caller, and it's following a girl called Blue Wing and the island that she lives on, and the traditional job that one of the men in the village usually has of calling sharks. And the part of the environment I think I get away with recommending this one for is that the traditional aspects of the job have gone slightly. There's more of a tourist slant to the shark calling now, that they make money by having to get tourists and show the sharks for that. But this is a brilliant story. The description of the ocean and the description of the islands is incredible. There's a twist in the tale that really caught me out, which is absolutely brilliant as well. So a lovely story by Zilla Bethel, The Shark Caller, that one. I'll go for one more. This is one of my favorite authors, apart from Hannah Gould and Vashti Hardy, obviously, but Oliver Jeffers, Here We Are. And this is Notes for Living on Planet Earth. And I love Oliver Jeffers' illustration. I also love the messages he's got in all his books as well. This is about planet Earth and how we need to look after the planet Earth, but we also need to look after ourselves, the people that live on there as well. So it's about relationships with the planet, relationships with each other, and how we need to work together to develop those. So it talks about, life in the city and what that's like and how chaotic that can be. And what I quite like is it then looks at the planet and talks about the fact that it's the only one we've got, and we need to look after it, and we need to be kind to each other, and we need to be kind to the planet as well. So a lovely book. It looks big Earth, but there's lots of us on here, so be kind. There's enough for everyone. And I think that message of looking after the planet, because it's the only one that we've got for all of us that live on it, is a really key one as well. Toria, can I come back to you now? Because that'd be good.
Yes, I'm back. You're about to be booted off, but I will, it's... can I just say, before I bring our other guests back in, that Hazel Pinner is an absolute star. Whilst you've been talking, Rich, she has updated the Padlet. I've put the Padlet into the chat for everyone watching, so that actually you can just click on the Padlet, and all the books that Rich has recommended and all the books that have been recommended so far by all our guests will be on there. So big applause for Hazel, who's just amazing every time she watches it.
Thank you, Hazel.
She's a darling. She really is. She was the one that wanted you to talk slow enough that she could type. Hannah and Vashti, I'm really interested to know, what do you want us as educators to know about your books and how to use them in the classroom? Hannah, I'll come to you first. Tell me what you want me to do.
I think the first thing to say is, it's just been so lovely as a new author to see the enthusiasm from the teachers for The Last Bear, because when I didn't really think about the school angle. When you're kind of writing, it's your dream. And so I just, for any teachers watching this or later on and here, I just want to say thank you, because your enthusiasm and your passion and support, including the teachers here tonight, it's just meant the world to me as an author. And and to get the book into the classroom, to get The Last Bear into the classroom and into the hands of children has always been my dream, because it's about making a difference. That's the whole point of the book. So in terms of how to use it in the classroom, we do have some teaching resources on a very practical point of view. We have got HarperCollins teaching resources on my website. But I think what we were saying before the call started is, as much as I want teachers to use the book in the classroom. I don't just want it to be a study. I would much rather that we modelled, there's a line of dialogue that April says in the book, and she says, but imagine if every single person on the planet just did one thing. So if the teachers were using the book, my dream scenario would be if they could think of one action they could do alongside the book, because then you're not just teaching the book, you're modeling the message of the book. And whatever that action is, whether it's kind of cutting down on single-use plastic or doing something about your recycling, or, you know, going out and doing some community work, that's really how I'd really love people to use the book, because that's how we start to make a difference.
And actually that links in really well to Empathy Day, which is June the 10th. And I know that in Empathy Day, everyone's making an empathy promise at the end of the day, really thinking about what they can do, that one small thing they can do that will make a difference, Hannah. Really so important.
Because it's not just about other people, it is that whole thing, like Rich was saying about the Oliver Jeffers book. It's about, you know, there's a scene in my book where April and Bear are listening to the island, and Bear showing April that the island, i.e. the world, is a living, breathing entity. And when we can start to think of it as a personal being, as a member of the family that we would want to take care of, that means we're, you're right, having empathy towards the earth as well. So yeah, for me, what one action can we do alongside the book to model the behaviour and to instill behavioural change into the children, into the classroom at that young age?
So powerful. Imagine if every class did that.
Yeah, as a class or as an individual.
Yeah. The ripple effect, just immense. Do you like where I got ripple in there, Rich?
Very on brand. Thank you, Toria. Well done.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Vashti, how would you like us to use your books? Vashti, are you there? How would you like us to use your books?
Well, you know, if you know my books, you know I love to throw in big questions. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I can now.
Sorry,
did you a minute ago? You smiled so beautifully for quite a sustained amount
Sorry,
of time.
I had to swap my Wi-Fi's going again into.
Right, just go for it, and I will tell you if we can't hear you.
I can do that. I'll go for it. Hopefully it will hold out. So yeah, I love to throw lots of big questions in, and so it's that deep thought and discussion that grows organically. You know, I never want to be didactic with my books. I'm not sort of going out to sort of teach any big lesson, but I'm threading all these things in to hopefully encourage those discussions and deep thinking that you can really get into, especially in that kind of upper key stage 2 band. So with Crowfall, there's, you know, building on what Hannah said, I love that scene in The Last Bear where they're listening to the earth. In Crowfall, there is a sentient organism that pretty much makes up the island, and it's a living, breathing creature that reacts, and it's quite it's benign and kind and very neutral, and it's humans' relationship with this creature and how on one island, this island where Orin Crowfall is from, industry rules and invention rules and nature is very controlled, and this creature called the Eared is very controlled. And Orin finds out, he's like a lowly server from the west tip of the island, he finds out a grave secret that the engineers are doing something to this amazing organism and it's killing their island, and he finds out this secret and kind of is propelled into huge danger, and also knowing that it's down to him to save the people of Ironhold and the island and this creature. So it's a big ecological fable in a kind of a strange new environment that I hope you all enjoy. But it's the relationship between industry and invention and nature and humans, that triangle that I think is really interesting to explore. Actually, for key stage, like the lower key stage 2, I think you can do that with Harley as well, because there's the iron forest where there's this problem, this fungus growing, and Harley introduces something she thinks is going to save it. She introduces a slug, weirdly, but it becomes a predator. So it's the themes of how when you're dealing with ecological problems, that sometimes you can think you're doing something that can help, but actually you might be starting off a whole domino effect of problems. So that's the sort of thing that I find really interesting. Like when I used to be a teacher, that's the sort of thing that I used to love, getting a book with all these lovely things that you can really have a good chat to the children about, and they're soon, you know, bouncing more ideas back at you than you'd ever imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Hydeh, let me come over to you with regards to how we use books about the environment. What do you feel?
So just building on from what everyone's been saying, really, that in our geography curriculum, we don't want the text to be studied and for questions to be answered based on like retrieval or inference. It's more about this is a topic for discussion and let's use it as the heartbeat of our geography curriculum. So our key concept coming up is sustainability. And we've got a core text. So what Rich recommended last is our core text for Year 6. And whilst they're looking at the desertification in the Sahel countries in Africa, it's that idea of, it doesn't matter if my texts don't necessarily link, because it's the wider picture of sustainable and what we need to do in order to create sustainability. And I got the idea of linking it to our fieldwork through this book called Follow the Moon Home. And it's about the conservation of sea turtles in South Carolina and how human action was causing them to not reach the sea because of their lights on the beach. And so the teacher was talking to them about how we can make a change, a small change, and the children are the ones driving it, and they identify a thing, they take action, they reflect. So I really would like to use books to, like what Hannah and Vashti and Rich have been saying, to kind of make an action, to do something in our local community. And that might be something like planting plants which the bees can pollinate from, or picking up the litter around our community, we've got quite a few secondary schools local to us, and about like making links with those to look after Neachels, but that kind of thing of using the books as a discussion point, not as a let's study this text. That's how I'd like to use the text in geography.
I think that's so valuable. Rich, what are your thoughts? Because many educators have a text for English and they might have a class reader. But what are your thoughts about having different texts? I pretty much know them, I'm sure. But what are your thoughts about having a text for subjects?
It's funny, and I at the minute I've got 3 or 4 different books on the go with my class in different subjects. All driven by one central book. So the book that we're reading at the minute is The Explorer by Katherine Rundle, which I absolutely love as a book, just because it opens up so many avenues for discussion and links to other books. So are you ready? I can recommend more books now and get away with it, because this doesn't count as my 5 minutes, does it? Okay, so we're reading The Explorer. And what we're doing is we're linking it to history and the history of the Victorian explorers and their legacies. And we look into a character called Percy Fawcett, who's mentioned in The Explorer.
Yes.
But there are some brilliant books around his actual life and his expeditions, which his story is absolutely incredible. So the children love this idea. But then we go down the road of, actually, was he doing a good thing exploring the Amazon and opening up to Western diseases and modernization? And actually in The Explorer doesn't want that to happen. He realizes the harm that causes. So we have a whole discussion about, actually, should we leave it alone? Should we visit these places? We know they're beautiful, but should we go there because of the knock-on problems? We also link it to the Maya in history. In geography, we look at rivers, and we look at, you know, all the facts around the Amazon River and the different uses of it along its journey. and watch the documentaries about that and things like that. So I think it's brilliant if you can read as many books as possible. But I think having that central theme, it gives them some sort of context as well. They're not being read in isolation just because, like Hydeh said, we want to analyze a text in geography, so let's analyze this. If there's a central theme like the Amazon and everything sort of links into it in some way, it does provide that context. And I think it becomes a bit more meaningful then.
That makes complete sense to me. Now, Rich, I'm going slightly off script here because I am giving the ladies the opportunity to do a few recommendations. Do not unmute yourself, Richard Simpson. So, ladies, over to you. Recommend away. So okay, Hazel's busy, and I know that all of you have books that you would like to recommend, and I'm going to watch Rich now go, for goodness sake, it should be my turn.
I've actually got a pile because I did a recommendation the other day. So I'm going to go quickly. Rich, listen and learn. This is how you do it quick. Hark Lights, Tim Tilley, current Waterstones Children's Book of the Month. You're never too small to make a difference. Illustrated and written by him. Melt, Elle Fountain. Brilliant book set in the Arctic tundra, a boy and a girl whose journeys come together. Really fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that. That came out very recently. I'm just going to lean down and get my others. I'm not disappearing on you. This is an Australian-based New Zealand author called Bren McDibble. She's written 3 dystopian climate fiction books for children. This is the book I've got at the moment, Across the Risen Sea. But her most famous one is called How to Bee, B-E-E, which is set in a world where children have to become the bee pollinators. Really interesting. We've mentioned Nicola Penfard, Where the World Turns Wild. So my final one is actually just from the World Book Day, which is Jess French's Protect the Planet, which is £1 World Book Day 1, and just a great introduction, non-fiction book with lots and lots of eco tips and very, very inclusive. It's kind of like how can we come together as a community, no matter your background, to make these small differences. There we go.
Thanks, Hannah. Hydeh, go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a wordless picture book by Baru, and he's an amazing, he makes graphic novels and alpha about refugees. It's fantastic. He's a fantastic illustrator and author. And it's Where's the Elephant? And it's kind of like a Where's Wally? So as you go through, so we've got an elephant and a parrot are the characters, and deforestation is happening around them. And before they know it, the town has been built. And the elephant and parrot, if you can see them here, can't work out where to show you.
Yeah.
And then they're held in captivity as the town is like suffering more from human geography. And then they escape the zoo and find a new island together. But it's a picture, it's a wordless picture book, and it's beautiful for all children, but early years are going to be looking at this. So very excited for that. Because we have an activist linked to our geography, year 1 are thinking about Seeds of Change by Wangari, and it talks about the story behind the Green Belt movement in 1977, about how people in Kenya decided to start planting trees because the soil was being affected by the lack of water, and the trees weren't holding up the absorbing up the water. So that's a brilliant book. And then I'm going to recommend The Proper Way to Meet a Hedgehog and How to Other Poems. So we were sent this by CLPE. My children won a competition, but there's just some lovely poems that link really lovely to the environment. So we've got How to Bird Watch, How to Be a Tree in Winter, How to Take Care of Your Tree, and it's beautifully illustrated too. So those are my recommendations.
I know this sounds stupid, but every month, without fail, whatever theme, I'm always blown away by the amount of amazing books on that theme or genre. You know, I just am, and I looked, I've got to get Where's the Elephant? That just appeals greatly to me. Vashti, add in your recommendations.
I've only got a couple, but one of them is Lindsay Galvin's Darwin's Dragons, which might not seem sort of an obvious choice, but I think with the Charles, there's a cabin boy that's going with Charles Darwin, no less, to the Galapagos, and you can tell there's a bit of a twist in a fantasy twist in the tale, but it's just, gorgeous mix of history, science, and all those delicious things, which I think would be a beautiful class read. And look at that cover, how gorgeous. Just once you want to sort of teleport into that world. Obviously, I've got to recommend The Last Bear, my favourite read of the year so far still. It reigns triumphant, but it's, beautiful story, just so touching. And, I was right there beside April, which I love to be. I think if I'd have read this as a child, this would have changed me and stayed with me forever. So, I'm sure you've all discovered it, but if you haven't, do. And slightly different one, but you know how much I love Michelle Paver, and the Wolf Brothers series might not seem like an obvious choice for kind of climate and ecology, but set in the Stone Age, the characters' relationship with their environment and the creatures is central to this world and central to what's going on, and there is so many lovely details about how they survive within their environment and care for it and listen to it and communicate and talk and exist with the creatures in a much more spiritual way and a much more understanding way. So I think that's a great series to discover if you haven't yet, and I'm sure would promote loads of brilliant classroom discussion and things in it. So they're my recommendations.
Thank you, everyone. Rich, we will come to you. Are you surprised? This might be a stupid question to all of you. Are you surprised how many books are out there now? Listening to everyone else's recommendations, how many books are out there now that cover the environment, climate change, really important issues?
I think it's become more obvious with some of the, I think someone said earlier that it used to be like a sub story. So Michael Morpurgo's book Kensuke's Kingdom is a lovely book that I love reading, and the main story is that the friendship and the relationship between the two characters, isn't there? But there's actually quite a big part of the story there where the poachers come and take the orangutans from the island, and that animal smuggling and poaching and the illegal trade in animals is a massive deal, and it's not the biggest part of that book, but actually looking at that book now, we could make that and look at that issue as a huge thing. So I think possibly it's the awareness that's been raised, and it's been in lots of books in the past, but our awareness hasn't been as heightened around lots of those issues.
I think you're right. We actually do Kensuke's Kingdom, and it's really interesting because we focus entirely on the relationship between Michael and Kensuke, and then it's like that we shoot over. I don't even know that I've had a meaningful. No, I do know. I haven't had a meaningful discussion with my children over that part of the book, over the orangutans, because we've been so focused on the relationships.
That part of the book's brilliant, and actually it links really nicely. There's an advert for Iceland that was banned from TV for being too political because it was about an orangutan in someone's bedroom, and the whole advert was seen as being too political. It was banned from TV. If you look on YouTube, you can find it and watch it. And I think they've turned it into a children's book, and we link to that as part of our topic. And you look at that story about there's an orangutan in my bedroom. Well, what's he doing there? He shouldn't be there. And the reverse of the story is, well, the orangutan has people in his forest, and they shouldn't be there either. So so we look at that as an idea, and we link to that idea. And so it's a really nice sort of way to take that again.
What are the rest of your thoughts?
I think there's some really good, but I think it's like Rangtang, isn't it? It's narrated by Emma, Emma, who won the Oscar. I can't remember her surname, so mine's gone blank. But I think when I was like writing the book, I remember looking at the news, and you've got like hundreds of thousands of millions of children who are like doing the Friday marching and strikes. And if you're looking at that world and just the sheer amount of children out there across the world in different countries, you know, all countries, then you realize, well, there's a market for this book. Yeah, there's a market for these types of books, because that's one of the things and the themes that they're so passionate about, and it's their future. But likewise, it shouldn't be their problem to solve. You know, I don't think, as again, back to the responsibility, we shouldn't be saying, well, you deal with it. You know, we've got to kind of come from the adults. But that's where I think it's just what they care about at the moment, because it's their planet's on fire, and they're the ones out on the front line trying to do something about it. And children's books are just a reflection of that.
Vashti, final thoughts? Is she with us? Hydeh, final thoughts?
I think that it goes back to inspiring the children to make sense of what's happening as well. That's what I hope to make use of the books for, to make sense of the world around them and get connected with nature and get those personal geographies reignited after such a awful year. So I think that's what the books around the climate can do.
Yeah, completely agree. I'll come back to Vashti after Rich. I'm going to give you, like, we're now at 4 minutes to 7. Oh, 4 minutes to 8. You've got 3 minutes. Go. You need to unmute yourself.
Need to unmute myself. Yes, there we go. Okay. So I've got a few. I'll go through them really quickly. I'm sorry I'm not giving them more
Hannah,
time.
do it what Hannah did, because it was really quick.
So this is a lovely little series that started off by Sally Gardner called The Tindims, and it's about a bunch of people who live on an island made out of plastic salvage and how they recycle things and live on it. And that's a really lovely little series. A bit, the name, they're Skittle Brew, Pinch, Captain Spoons and Admiral Bonnet, and they're the Tindims of Rubbish Island. And it's just a really nice message about recycling and using things there. So that's a lovely little series. This book is brilliant. My year sixes have loved this one. I put it on the shelf. It's Rust by Gemma Fowler. And it's quite sci-fi, actually. Imagine all the rubbish on Earth is floating around. We've had to send all the rubbish to outer space because we can't deal with it. And the problem is it's going to come crashing back down again. And the girl in the story, Rainey, has to do something about that and try and stop that happening. So this is about, you know, the problem of waste and looking after what are rubbish and what we do about it. So that's a really good sci-fi novel for older readers. A pair of picture books by Jeannie Baker. One's called Window. They're wordless picture books. And what happens here is you see the view out a window and how it changes over time, and how the view out the window at the start of the book, and I'm struggling to find it, is, you know, lovely, and it's nature and it's a forest. And as you go through the book, it gets more and more and more built up. So lovely discussion there about construction and the environment and building and expansion of cities and all that type of stuff. The Tin Forest is a lovely book about a man that lives in a scrapyard made of metal, and one day a plant starts to grow. So that's a really lovely book in there as well. Really quick one. And this one that's more of a sort of geography book called Wonder Garden, and the illustrations in this are absolutely incredible. So you open it up and it goes through different habitats. So that is the Amazon, and the number of creatures and things that are in that is absolutely stunning. And when you open it up, it goes into detail about the animals and the habitat and a lot of scientific data about flight and the birds. So that's just a lovely sort of non-fiction reference book, but illustrated in the most fantastic way. The cover, the shiny gold on the cover. Shiny gold on the cover reminds me of my last book to recommend, which is The Last Bear, but people have talked enough about that, so I don't need to say anything else. Just that it is actually as good as people are saying. They're not making it up.
Thanks, Rich.
Was that 3 minutes? Did I do it?
You were really fast that time. That was very impressive. We clearly need Hannah Gold in to put pressure on you to do it quickly. I've loved all the recommendations, and I've loved the chat that we've had tonight, because I know for me, I'm going back into the classroom tomorrow, looking at my books, through different eyes. I'm not just looking at the obvious, let's talk about the character's emotions, but actually I'm looking at the deeper themes within there, and actually that genre that we've talked about, which is the environment. For anyone watching, any books that you would recommend, please add it to the chat, because Hazel is absolutely on it and will add it to the Padlet. Before we finish, we'll get final thoughts from our guests, but I just want to remind everyone of the next Tiny Voice Talks book salon, which is on Tuesday, the 8th of June. It's always the second Tuesday of the month. And the theme next month is diversity. So we're going to be chatting about books that are really good to pull in and use on diversity. If you've got themes that you think would be useful for future Tiny Voice Talk book salons, please get in touch and let us know. Also, this will be on the Tiny Voice Talks YouTube channel. Please share widely with anyone, other teachers, schools, etc., because I think this discussion we've had tonight, and I'm pretty sure everyone will agree that's here, really useful just for changing that mindset over how we are using books and the way we are looking at them. So, final thoughts. I'm going to come to Rich first. Final thoughts, Rich.
Just like you said, it's really important to get that message across, and I think the message now is more important than ever. While we were talking, I was just thinking about the story it's been on the news last days, that whale that's come up the River Thames. Just have a look at stories like that are happening right in front of our eyes in real life, and there are plenty of books that show them as well. And it's just about getting those messages across that we need to do something about it, don't we?
Absolutely. Hannah, final thoughts.
Just going for the unmuting. Not much to say, just like kind of a big bear roar, because I think when we find our voice and we find our roar individually and collectively, we can, even if we're a quiet person, a quiet child, we don't have to be the loudest child to make a difference. The loudest voices are the ones that do something, whether through an act of kindness or just a small gesture. So if we can encourage our children to find their roar, then I think we're leaving the planet a better place, and we're also creating empowerment in the child and themselves to know they're making a difference. And to thank you for having me. So it was a pleasure to be here.
No, I love what you've said, and actually the Tiny Voice Talks thing is all about that. It's all about us finding our roar.
Yeah.
Vashti, final thoughts.
I would love to be in your classes. If I'd have been in your classes when I was younger, I would have just adored it. You're all amazing. And I think it, tonight really shows the richness that's there within so many brilliant texts that we have. And, if you're a teacher and there's someone in your school that isn't into children's books yet, make it your mission to spread the ripples, Rich, to spread that, it's great. We're all, I'm guessing everyone here, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, aren't we? Yeah. And we're really passionate about children's books, and we know that they can reach beautifully into, geography, into science, into climate, the environment, into art, DT, all these things. And let's try and recruit some more into this, because people don't realize what's out there until they discover this. So I think we just got to keep sort of spreading the word about what's possible through children's books.
Absolutely. Hydeh, final thoughts, because I already did a final thought with you, so go for a final my darling.
I'm just going to share that Padlet with all of my staff at St Matthew's, because it's amazing. So the Padlet that with all the book recommendations on is just brilliant. So there's my final thoughts. Thank you for the Padlet.
So I think, if everyone watching can share the Padlet with people, but also share the video, just share. I think the more educators that hear these sort of discussions, the more we're going to be changing the relationship our children and our educators have with books in the classroom. So thank you to everyone who has watched. Thank you for everyone that's engaged, and we will see you on the 8th of June. But finally, thank you so much to Rich, Hannah, Vashti and Hydeh. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. You can unmute yourselves and also bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Toria. Thanks for
Bye.
having me.
Bye.